Yo, what up, Comic Sense crowd, community, crew, my 3C family? What up, everybody out there in YouTube land? I am Issue X. This is Comic Sense, and this is our first ever episode of Issue X Spoils the Specs. What are we going to do? So, we are going to spoil the spec on Marvel Comics releasing today for New Comic Book Day. We're covering 3 titles because this is what we do. Listen, I don't follow a lot of YouTube content creators when it comes to comic associated things. I have that Todd McFarlane mind frame. When he started writing comics, he stopped reading comics so that he wouldn't be subconsciously influenced by what other people are doing. What I did do in my research to put together this show was I did look at a couple of people who review. There's some really dope reviewers out there. But one thing I noticed is that they don't do spoilers. Comic Sense is a spec entity. We spec. This is what we do. So we are going to not just give you a review. We are going to spoil the spec in these reviews. We're trying to do our own thing. And listen, if you don't like spoilers, this isn't the show for you. But if you are here, give it a thumbs down because you don't feel the spoilers. Do something. Don't just do nothing. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a thumbs down on YouTube. Do something. Speaking of which, didn't want to put up comments. Sorry about that. Actually wanted to put up the banner. That banner. Just a second. We got more banners up than we want. Live viewers comments. Yeah, we get it. Okay, so we're getting back into it. Sorry for a little bit of technical difficulty. Like and follow Comic Sense on Facebook and join our Comic Sense Facebook group. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Find us on Instagram. Find us on the Twitter. Again, this is going to be a spoiler review show where we spoil the spec for 3 Marvel comics dropping this week. Issue X, me, is going to spoil the spec. So we're going to get right into it. This is what we do here at Comic Sense. We like to speculate. A lot goes into it. Takes a lot of work. You already know what I say. If you're using things like Key Collector, shout out to Key Collector. For spec and only Key Collector, it is not spec. It is disrespect. You have to read. We did the work. We read the books. We got the picks. We're going to jump into Diamond. We're going to show you what time it is on these Marvel books dropping today. You still have time. It is 11:45 in the afternoon. Comic shops probably opened at 10:30. If you are on the fence about getting anything that you see here in this thread, get up off the fence. Choose a side. The grass, in this case, is greener. Choose a side. So here we go. These are the 3 books we will be covering. Amazing Fantasy number 1000. Gambit number 2. Thunderbolts number 1. These are the 3 books we will be covering for Marvel Comics, and we will spoil this spec. So let's get into it. First up, we have Amazing Fantasy number 1000. We are not going to review this entire book, but we are going to review 5 of the stories in this anthology book. Better book than I believe anyone expected it to be. You know, you first think you do an Amazing Fantasy 1000, you make it oversized, you charge $8 for the cover price. This is a money grab. No, they brought a ton of creators, as you can see here on the screen. Kurt Busiek killed it. Really, Jonathan Hickman, like, wow, killed. His story was great. Really great story. So we're gonna get into why I'm only covering certain stories. I'm only covering the stories that have first appearances. I'm only covering the stories that matter, the spec stories. We are going to spoil the spec. First things first. We're gonna skip the creative team right now because we're going to give you the creative team for each story. But the comic that brought you Spider-Man hits issue number 1000 today. We're going big to celebrate in this, our 1000th issue of the Amazing Fantasy. An all-star roster of creators: Anthony Falcone, Dan Slott, Ho Chi Anderson, Jonathan Hickman, Kurt Busiek, Michael Cho, Neil Gaiman, Rainbow Rowell, Giuseppe Camuncoli, Jim Chung, Marco Cicchetto, Oliver Quapel, Ryan Stegman, Steve McNiven, Terry Dotson, Todd Nauck, and more are coming together to celebrate Peter Parker, the Spider-Man's birthdays. So then, there is that. Now, this is the first story that we are going to cover. It is titled Spider-Man vs. His Sinister 60th. Creative team: Dan Slott, Jim Chung, Humberto Ramos, and Joe Sabino. So, this is the only page we're going to show you. We'll break the story down for you, but this is the only page we're going to show you because this is the page that matters. In this story, it opens up. This is the first thing that you see. Peter Parker is 60 years old. It is his 60th birthday. And on his 60th birthday, he is fighting a younger generation vulture. Cleans the floor with him too. But this is a younger generation vulture. It is the first appearance of this vulture. First appearance of this vulture. Spider-Man doing what he does. He can never stop being Spider-Man, even on his 60th birthday. He pummels the vulture. He gets a phone call from his wife, Mary Jane, who is waiting for him at a restaurant to celebrate his birthday. Obviously, she chastises him because he's out fighting crime, and he promises her, like, listen, I'm done for the night. And in that moment, he sees a woman getting mugged. And of course, Spider-Man being Spider-Man, he decides to stop the mugger and is shot by this mugger. And much to the mugger's surprise, like, wait a minute, what? Spider-Man never gets shot. The mugger is more surprised that he actually hit Spider-Man than Spider-Man is at being hit. But yes, Spider-Man is shot and the wound is determined to be fatal. And in this moment, while Spider-Man is riding in the ambulance, he begins to lament, like, why? Why did he have to get shot by a burglar like Uncle Ben? Why couldn't it be the Sinister Six? Why couldn't it be them all at once? Why did it have to be a burglar? He's rushed to the hospital. Mary Jane is notified. He's in the hospital. He's clinging to his life. When he comes out of it, later on the same evening, he's surprised to find that all of New York City has come to visit him. Really dope. All of New York City has come to visit him. And Mary Jane comes to visit him. And she talks to him for a little bit. And then there's a moment where everyone leaves the room and the doctors call a code because it appears that Spider-Man has flatlined. When they rush into the room, they note that Spider-Man is no longer in the bed. Mary Jane runs to the window to see Spider-Man outside, stopping a mugger from robbing somebody. That was weird, right? All of New York City shows up to the hospital to see Spider-Man, and this mugger is going to rob somebody outside of the hospital where all of New York City is in attendance. That part to me just doesn't hold water. But anyway, that's that story. I love how they had him really lament getting shot, what he believed to be a fatal wound by a mugger, a la Ben Parker, Uncle Ben. So that was Spider-Man versus his 60th. Spider-Man versus his sinister 60th. Next in this anthology, yes, there is your first appearance right there. This is a story called Spider-Man versus Conspiraton. The creative team is Armando Iannucci, Ryan Stegman, J.P. Meyer, Sonia Obeck, and Joe Sabino. There he is. Spider-Man, meet your worst nightmare, Conspiraton. Spider-Man versus Conspiraton. That is a first full appearance of Conspiraton. So what's going on here is the story opens up with a whole bunch of citizens arguing amongst each other in various places in New York City over conspiracies and things that they believe to be true. And these arguments are rabid. They are intense. Spider-Man gets to the Daily Bugle where J. Jonah Jameson is holding up 2 newspapers, and he tells Spider-Man that he just won a Pulitzer Prize and shows him the newspaper. Spider-Man sees a different headline on the newspaper. He sees something like Spider-Man is the best hero in the world and all other superheroes pale in comparison to him. So Spider-Man finds this to be fishy, and he does some investigation, and he finds that the paper at the Daily Bugle has been tampered with and coated with a hallucinogenic drug that makes people see the things that they want to believe, secretly that they want to believe. The paper confirms the secret beliefs of those who read the paper. So everyone who picks up this newspaper sees something different. If you believe in aliens and that's your secret conspiracy passion, there it is, right there on the front. Aliens discovered in Times Square, all of that. That's what it does. So Spider-Man digs further, and he finds this guy, the Conspiraton. Look at the armor. Much bigger than Spider-Man, metallic armor. He's got these nozzles on his head that shoot out hallucinogenic gas. So this hallucinogenic gas causes you to see the things that you secretly believe and or fear. Spider-Man gets into a fight with this guy. Guy blows the gas in his face. Now this giant mech suit wearing entity has the head of Aunt May and is taunting Spider-Man. Spider-Man makes short work of it, knocks the head off, hits this guy, takes the helmet off, and hits this guy with a dose of his own hallucinogenic. This guy turns out to be a nerdy son of a steel magnate who is deathly afraid of spiders. And he begins to ramble about the spiders, and their legs are hairy, and there's so much of them. Dad, do something about them, and blah, blah, blah. And here is what we are talking about. This is Spidey hitting me in the face with a dose of his own medicine. And then he begins to ramble. Spiders, Dad, do something. Spiders, Dad, they're up to something. Like he's afraid of spiders. This is the Conspiraton. It is the first appearance of the Conspiraton. First appearance of the Conspiraton. The next story that we are going to get into, another really cool story. Just checking the notes. This is written by Kurt Busiek, art Terry, Rachel Dodson, and Joe Sabino once again on that creative team. And this one is a very interesting story. Kurt Busiek decided to do something a little bit more unique. This is called Slaves of the Witch Queen. So what happens with this story is you get a tombstone right on the first page. You get a tombstone, an Egyptian tombstone in an art history museum that opens up, and out comes the Witch Queen and her hordes of mummies. She is here to take over New York City. This is why she's here. She comes from another dimension. She's here to take over New York City. We will later find out that this story is a sequel to a backup story in Amazing Fantasy 15 called Man in the Mummy Case, featuring a small-time criminal named Rocco Rank. So what happens is, back in the Man in the Mummy Case, Rocco Rank was a small-time criminal who was hiding from the police. He was trying to escape going to prison. In the meantime, the Witch Queen, who is an other dimensional queen of an Egyptian-type landscape, she sends out her mummies throughout realities and throughout time to recruit people as slaves. She makes a deal with them. She offers them safe haven or gives them harbor. And in return, they become slaves in her kingdom, queendom, what have you. Rocco Rank was one of these people who became a slave. He hid in the mummy tomb. The mummy led him to the tomb, told him you can hide here. He ended up in her reality and became a slave, where he was a slave for some years. But Rocco Rank has the gift of gab, and he talked about how glorious and how wondrous this place he came from, New York City. So, of course, he's called before the queen to talk about what he has been talking about to the other slaves to her. And he convinces her as a way for him to get back to New York City. Listen, take me there. I'll show you. If you want to conquer anything, you want to conquer New York City, which brings us back to this first page with her coming out of this mummy. or this sarcophagus, if you will, getting ready to take over New York City, where she encounters Spider-Man immediately. And you see what's really cool is she's on a ancient technological sort of goblin glider, which is really, really cool. At any rate, she encounters Spider-Man and she gets into the fisticuffs, if you will, with Spidey. And she is surprised at how capable Spider-Man is. Very surprised at how capable Spider-Man is. And they end up fighting outside the museum. And when she sees New York City, she's in awe. She's surprised at how technologically advanced New York City is. She sees airplanes flying in the air, and she sees Spider-Man who can lift 10 tons and who's dexterous and has a spidey sense and is shooting webs from his hands, according to what she observes. And she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Mind you, she's not afraid of Spider-Man. She just didn't expect that this reality, of all the realities she's been to, had people as capable as Spider-Man. And Spider-Man begins to have a conversation with her. And he tells her, he's like, man, you feel some type of way about me. Where do you meet Thor? Where do you meet the Hulk? The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, like that. I'm not even, listen. And that's when she realizes, like, all right, we wasn't ready for this. And she takes her horde and she goes back to her dimension. And she had made a promise to Spider-Man as well, like, yo, I will free my slaves, because Spider-Man scared her with the threat of, if you don't, we're coming. And her dimension, her little mummies, she got power, but the rest of them are not ready for that type of beef. So she releases the slaves that were taken from other dimensions, not the ones from her kingdom, but the ones that were taken from other dimensions. Rocco Rank finds himself back in New York City, about to escape. Spider-Man catches him and says, I assume you have some sort of beef with the authorities that you need to resolve. And he does the thing where he leaves them webbed up for the authorities. And that is the first full appearance of, or reappearance, if you will, of the Witch Queen. Key book. Here, next, we are going to talk about my favorite story in this anthology. It was really good. Shout out to Jonathan Hickman. He put in the work. And as you see, there you have it. This story is called You Get It. And man, what an apropos title. You Get It. Written by Jonathan Hickman, Marco Cicchetto, and Frank Martin Joe Sabino. This is your creative team. What we have here is Spider-Man lamenting why so many bad things happen to him. You know what Peter does. He gets in his feelings. And he's going on a monologue, an inner monologue in his head, like, why do bad things continue to happen to me? And he doesn't have an answer to the question. So he reaches out to the Spider-Verse, the other Peter Parkers across the multiverse, and they bring him to this chamber where it is presided over by 3 very interesting, very unique Spider-Men. All of them are Peter Parker, and they're messing with him. They're like, wait, his name is Peter, E-R, not Pete? Like, really? This is what we're doing? Like, they're really going in on him. And they're like, he just wants to know, hey, is it as bad for you as it is bad for me? And one of them's like, nah, bruh, I want a Nobel Prize. And the other one's like, yeah, and his son is great. And then the other, they're literally telling Peter, like, nah, bro, we don't got it like you. It's good for us. Of course, they're being sarcastic and they're joking with him. One of them even says, you know, I have arthritis. And Peter's like, seriously? And he's like, no, I really have cancer. And Peter's like, oh my God. And he's like, no, I'm kidding. I have arthritis. Like, they're really going in, like pulling his leg. And they tell him, they're like, listen, bruh, this is what you do. Even if you wanted to stop, you couldn't stop. You get up, you go out, you fight the good fight every day. You throw yourself into the eye of the storm every day because that is who you are. That is what you do. You get it? And of course, Petey gets it. But what's really cool is all of the various Spider-Men, and I'm not talking your Spider-Verse Spider-Man, your Penny Parkers and your, these other universal spider avatars. I am talking Peter Parkers from across the multiverse show up to confirm what these 3 have been saying. Love the Fantastic Four Spider-Man one. That outfit is so dope. So you have Spider-Man that you have not seen before, One-Eyed Spider-Man and tons of new Spider-Man. Will they show up again? Who knows? But here they are. And we know that Marvel has been a Hickman verse for some years. Here they are, first appearances right here. That is You Get It by Jonathan Hickman. Get it? Next, Next, we have a rest in peace in memoriam to Mike Pisciullo, passed away in 2022. Mike Pisciullo was a senior VP of Marvel Television and Entertainment, Marketing and Publicity for 20 plus years. Rest in peace to Mike Pisciullo. The reason why we are giving him a rest in peace and shout out to the family of Mike Pisciullo, rest in peace, is because Marvel is also giving Mike Pisciullo a rest in peace, and they're doing it, albeit posthumously, in a great, great way. We get the end of the book, you think the story is over, and then what do we get? We get a page commemorating Mike Pisciullo, and after that page, in this page, first and foremost, we find out that Mike Pisciullo was an aspiring writer for Marvel Comics, and he wrote a 5-issue series that never got released. So what Marvel did for him posthumously is they released some pages from that series. And in this page, if I bring your attention here, it opens up like this. And this scene at the top harkens back to a scene that we have not seen before because it took place in another issue of this 5-issue series, where this character in a black hoodie, in a black bodysuit, fights, not only, he teams up with Spider-Man to fight the Rhino and the Scorpion. The Shocker. And apparently, this character he figured out that Rhino couldn't swim in that suit, lured him into the East River. That's how him and Spidey won. So we can surmise, based on what follows, which is a pep talk from Spider-Man to this character whose name is Ryan. He is billed as Ryan, an aspiring superhero known as, yes, he chose the name Rhino. Spidey even jokes with him. Like, really? That's the name you had to choose? Rhino? Why not Hulk? At any rate, he's giving him a pep talk after this fight because we can assume that this guy was taking on the Shocker and the Rhino by himself. Spidey showed up to help him. We see Spidey sitting with Ryan, talking with Ryan. Later on, we see Ryan is bruised. He's battered. He apparently lost a fight, and he's feeling some type of way about it. And Spidey tells him winning fights isn't what makes you a hero. What makes you a hero is continuing to get up and continuing to do this thing. You got what it takes, man. And Ryan, he wants to know why Spidey does what he does. And Spidey pretty much says the same thing in other words. So there's that. This is your first appearance. Will we see this character again? Will they continue to pay tribute to Mike Pisciullo by giving us his character who is currently known as the Rhino? He is canonized in the Spidey mythos in this amazing fantasy number 1000 issue. Whether we see him again or not is up in the air, but he exists. He exists in the Spidey universe, canonized. Surprise little backup story there written by Mike Pisciullo, who has 5 issues of this run that have not been released. Again, rest in peace to Mike Pisciullo. Next thing we have on the docket. Told you, we won't spoil the spec. It's what we're going to do. Gambit number 2. Why am I covering Gambit? For those that are out there in YouTube land and for those following on Comic Sense, those in the Comic Sense crowd, community, and crew know how I feel about Gambit. For those in YouTube land who don't know how I feel about Gambit, I'm going to tell you real quick. Gambit is a product of that 90s cartoon. I believe that is the reason for his popularity. Personally, I believe he was put in to be a amalgamation of Nightcrawler and Longshot. All of that is cool. What is not cool, in my opinion, is the hot pink tank top and the trench coat in the 21st century. Not feeling it. Not going to hate on Gambit. We're going to get into the story. This is Gambit number 2. There are certain spec sites that allude to this book being a possible first appearance of Solaris. It is not a possible. It is. It is not a possible. It is. Not only is it the first appearance of Solaris, it is the first appearance of another character, Marissa DeCastro. We're going to get into that. There are both of your covers. You have your creative team is Sid Codian, Chris Claremont. Great writing by Chris Claremont on this book. Chris Claremont really harkens back to old Claremont, but with a modern take. Sid Codian, the art, it's okay. But the writing, you really feel like you're reading something Claremont and not old school. The only thing that I would criticize is everybody and their mama wants to refer to Gambit as Cajun. Like, really? This is what we doing? Everybody wants to refer to Gambit as Cajun. What I like about this story, though, is this story takes place, this entire series takes place between in the pages of Uncanny X-Men number 267. It harkens back to the Magic and Storm limited series. Little homage there where Storm and Magic were in limbo, and Uncanny X-Men number 160. And when Magic comes out of limbo, she goes in as a child, she comes out as an adult. In X-Men 160, and then they write a limited series that fits right in between the pages of X-Men 160 called Storm and Magic, or Storm and Illyana. The series is called Magic, where Magic, you get the whole story of Magic being in limbo. That is what you get here in this series, this Gambit Volume 6. You are getting a story that takes place somewhere within the pages of Uncanny X-Men number 267, otherwise known as the third appearance of Gambit. So let us get into it. There are both of your covers. Love seeing Will Spertasio still doing covers. We're going to pull that up for you. Gambit and Ro on the lam and off the rails. Ro is the mutant X-Man. Storm reverted to childhood and trying to retain use of her powers while fighting to find her memories. Gambit is the free spirit rim of the bow, not yet an X-Man, and making his way up and down the Mississippi. What do they have in common? They're mutants, they're thieves, and they are having a blast. But their side mission to escape the Shadow King goes off the rails when sudden disaster strikes, and the duo finds themselves in the midst of a local trouble with Ro's life and very essence in the balance. Can Gambit find the heroic path before it's too late? Featuring old favorites as well as new friends and enemies. So, old favorites, new friends and enemies sounds like it is spec-worthy to me. Is it spec-worthy? The jury is not out on that. The jury is in. They've made their decision. Spec-worthy. Scrap any notions of a possible first appearance of Solars. There's your first appearance of Solars, not just these two panels. He is a significant part of the book. The story opens up with Gambit and Ro in a car riding to flee from the Shadow King, who Storm has defeated in issue number 1. They are ran off the road and into a lake where Storm nearly drowns. Gambit isn't able to save her, but a woman, see her silhouette there, shows up to save her. This woman is Marissa DeCastro, also first appearance, Marine Recon, no joke. Shows up to save Storm. Storm is unconscious for a very long time. They live in this little area. It's very rural. Everybody owns their land. There isn't really a doctor there, but her mom happens to be a doctor. So they take Storm to her mother's house. Her mom cares for Storm. Storm, in the meantime, begins to have these visions of her ancestor, Ashaki, who beats her up pretty much to kind of train her while she's unconscious. She just kind of like does the white witch, the white-haired, blue-eyed witch bloodline thing on Storm. Storm comes from a long line of them and just beats the crap out of her until Storm can begin to hold her own. In the meantime, Gambit is beginning to develop a relationship, a friendship of sorts with Marissa, where he finds out that we got some Murphy Doyle company stuff. You know, Young Guns, Murphy Doyle, John Tunstall. We want your land. We're forcing everyone off of their land because we want the land because we're the big mogul Murphy Doyle. We got some Murphy Doyle stuff going on with Mr. Solars. He turns out to be, one of his people turned out to be one of the people who accidentally ran Gambit off the road and left Storm in the state that she's in. So Gambit's kind of pissed. He's also pissed at the way this guy seems to be talking to Marissa DeCastro because he wants the land. There is your Marissa DeCastro. He wants this land. He wants to seize this land from all of these local owners in this little community to do mogul stuff, whatever that may be, oil companies or airstrips or whatever it is that they want to do. He wants the land. He's muscling her family. She's not going to take it lying down because, Marine Force Recon. Like, Marine Force Recon. You see her kicking people in the face. She's the one who brought Storm out of the water. Gambit couldn't save her. She could. So this guy, when Gambit's like, yo, I'm about to step up to the plate because y'all ran my peoples off the road. We got beef. Gambit starts throwing the cards around. Solars is like, okay, cool. This is what we doing. I am going to get Warhawk, whom you have not seen in a very long time. I got him on my payroll. He's going to show up and break some stuff. Throws her truck like 40, 50 miles in the air. He doesn't really get into it with Gambit because he shows up at the Castro house where Storm is just waking from her state of unconsciousness. And that is where the story leads you. And so this third panel we have here is the Gambit issue number 3. And the reason why we're talking about Gambit issue number 3 is because look at that cover. You get Warhawk versus Gambit in Gambit's new uniform. As according to the solicitations, Gambit's new uniform, you see him with the black bodysuit in his new uniform. And you get Marissa DeCastro in the old Gambit uniform. How apropos. This is the way it should be. Gambit should not be wearing hot pink with the trench coat, calling himself cool in the 21st century. But Marissa DeCastro in the hot pink, fire. Fire. Gambit in the black. What is Marissa DeCastro going to be or do? Seems to be like some weird power type stuff coming from her hands all up on this cover. Storm got the lightning going on. Gambit in the black suit. How did we get to this moment when we were left on a cliffhanger with Storm and Marissa DeCastro's mom being confronted by Warhawk and Solars? Got to find out. Probably be covering that one too. We will probably be covering Ish UX. We'll probably be spoiling the spec on this one as well. Next, we have Thunderbolts. 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 This is number 1. I am showing you the 2 covers that matter. Cover A matters more than all of the covers. You get the first team appearance of the new Thunderbolts on both covers. But all things are not equal. And what we say in the Comic Sense community is you always want the A cover. All things being equal, you want the A cover. All things are not equal. The A cover is the better cover of every cover. And we are going to discover why. But first things first, we have an order. And we're going to stick to the script on that. So then, this is written by Jim Zub, art Sean Itzakse, and cover art for this particular one, cover A, which is the one that matters, David Nakayama. Like lightning, superpowered crooks have taken hostages in Staten Island. A dimensional rift tears open in Chinatown. Monsters running amok at the Met. Call in the thunder. New York City's finest are here to save the day. Hawkeye, Spectrum, America Chavez, Power Man, Persuasion, and Guts and Glory. You know them, you love them. They are the Thunderbolts. In the aftermath of Devil's Reign, the Big Apple has big problems, and it's up to a new group of Thunderbolts to turn things around. But when Clint Barton gets tasked with heading up his team and proving they can go toe-to-toe with anything the Marvel Universe can throw at them, the first opponent he's going to have to face is himself. And oh boy, are they not kidding. They aren't kidding. Listen, we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. There you have it. First appearance of the new Thunderbolts team. That is America Chavez. That is Clint Barton, known as Hawkeye. There is your new Power Man and your first appearance of Guts and Glory. First full appearance of Guts and Glory. And behind him is former Purple Girl, now known as Persuasion. Guts and Glory, I'm going to blow them up. Very 90s-esque, very tribute to Cable, so to speak, or that six-pack team that Cable was on with G.W. Bridge and Garrison Kane and 90s, big Rob Liefeld-esque guns and tons of pouches. And apparently, he's got something to do with energy. They don't really reveal his power yet, but you'll find out that his power has something to do with energy. We just don't know yet. He ends up going toe-to-toe with the Abomination at a point in time or another in this book, and we're going to get into it. But here he is again. Just want you to see. He's all over the book. His name is Guts and Glory. So what happens is, Hawkeye's chilling, and he calls up Wonder Man. And he's like, yo, bro, I want to go to the West Coast. How about we start up West Coast Avengers again? Me, you, we'll call up Wanda, Color, who is Tigra, and let's get it going. And while he's having that conversation, he gets an emergency call. Takes the call. It is none other than the new mayor of New York, Luke Cage, otherwise known as Power Man, who is trying to clean up from the shenanigans and the mess left by Kingpin during Devil's Reign. So Clint gets called into his office. He tells Clint, listen, Kingpin outlawed superhero teams except for his own team, the Thunderbolts. I haven't overturned that law yet, but I want to turn the Thunderbolts into something that matters for New York City. And I want you to lead this team of Thunderbolts. I'd like for you to lead this team of Thunderbolts. Clint's like, okay, I want to pick such and such. And they're like, nah, we got publicity and commercials and this got to be done right. Social media. We picked a team. It's the team we picked. We got Persuasion. We got Power Man. We got Guts and Glory. We got America Chavez. Like, this is the team we picked. This is what we got. We just need you to lead it. And we need you to go on a mission because we just got an alert that there's a breakout in a prison in the city. And that breakout happens to be led by Taskmaster, the daughter of Electro, Shriek, one of the symbiote characters, or Scream, excuse me, one of the symbiote characters. And so we had Abomination. So yes, they teamed up. They're decided they're breaking out. Taskmaster's leading it. Electro's daughter is the powerhouse on this team. So they get into beef. You get Guts and Glory beefing Abomination. He's not doing very well until Persuasion persuades Abomination to punch himself in the nuts over and over and over again. What a great move, right? She's like, punch yourself in the nuts. And he does. And she's like, again. And he just continues to pummel himself in the growing until he is no longer conscious. And at that point, Taskmaster is taken out by Chavez. He shoots her in the face. He's like, man, I've dealt with people like you. Threw the shield at her. I learned this from Cap. He's all of the bravado. And then he shoots her in the face like 6 times. And she's like, yeah. Like, just eats the bullets like it's nothing. And then proceeds to dismantle him. So the team gets dismantled with the exception of Electro's daughter, who can't nobody handle. And she takes all of the power in New York and powers herself up. And then she sees Guts and Glory and she's like, huh, you look tasty. And she takes power from him, which apparently he has some sort of energy type power work going on there. She takes it from him and can't nobody stop her. Like it's over. We can't stop her. And out of nowhere, she's just snatched up off the ground and flown up in the air. And when she's brought back to the ground, she's unconscious, and it is Spectrum who was holding her. Spectrum grabs her, pummels her, brings her back to Earth. Conflict concluded. However, we get back to Luke Cage's office where Spectrum and Clint Barton are speaking with Luke Cage, and Clint Barton, Hawkeye, nominates Spectrum to be a member of the team. And Luke Cage tells him it's something that we have to think about. Go home, get some rest. Clint Barton leaves. And then Luke Cage turns to Spectrum and says, so you showed up after all. Because secretly, Luke Cage, his first choice was Spectrum. It was not Clint Barton, who's really going through some things mentally. Really. Oh, yeah. There's a really dope fight with Clint Barton, a U.S. agent, which is why Luke Cage gets really, really kind of chastises him because U.S. agent is working undercover for them. And he shows up. And Clint, who has something personal against him, they beef. They beef. Luke Cage and Clint Barton, Hawkeye, and Luke Cage beef because Luke Cage is pissed that the last time they encountered each other, U.S. agent whooped him out. So, and Clint didn't care. U.S. agent told him, like, I'm working with you. Clint did not care. They got to blows. That is what it was. So not Luke Cage, U.S. agent. So Luke Cage is kind of upset about that. And Clint's like, oh, well. But he's like, man, go home and get some rest. And he turns to Spectrum and he says to her, listen, I thought you weren't going to be on this team. And she's like, I'm not. He was like, you were my first choice. It wasn't Clint. And he convinces her. He's like, listen, if you don't want to lead the team, fine. Just be on the team and kind of be the secret leader. Make sure everything goes right. And she accepts. And that is the story of Thunderbolts #1. But here is why you want the A cover. We're going to keep it real. Number 2. We forgot about this slide. I told you Clint got some things going on with himself. He gets home. He's having a conversation in the mirror. The synopsis for this book says, and the first opponent he's going to have to face is himself. And I told you that they mean that when they say that. Clint's going home. He's kicking it. He's talking about what happened today. Can he live up to the task of leading the Thunderbolts and changing the reputation behind this team? He's questioning himself, as he should. He's looking in the mirror. and he's evaluating himself in the mirror. They say when you look into the abyss also looks into you. It looks into him. Says, will I fail? I'm not going to fail. And it says, and yet you will, Clint, you feeble, foolish archer. What is this? What are we seeing here inside of Clint Barton? We won't know until issue number 2, but it is there. Is there a suppressed personality? Is there an entity a la what happened with Susan Storm way back in the day, living inside of Clint secretly? We will have to find out. But now we are going to get to the reason why you want cover A. Bam. So this is Egro, the Unbreakable. He is the last member of the Thunderbolts. He does not appear in this issue. Egro does not appear in Thunderbolts number 1. Egro appears on the cover of Thunderbolts number 1. Egro appears right here on the cover of Thunderbolts number 1. It is his first cover appearance. First cover appearance of Egro, the Unbreakable, who will confirm be a member of the Thunderbolts, as you see in the solicitations for issue number 2. That is a piece of the cover of issue number 2 featuring Egro the Unbreakable on that cover. He will make his first full in-story appearance in Thunderbolts number 2. But if you don't have an idea of why you want number 1 cover A, there it is. You are getting the first appearance and first cover appearance of Guts and Glory on cover A. You are getting the first ever anywhere appearance of Egro the Unbreakable on cover A. He's not in this book. You're going to want issue number 2, where he makes his first full appearance, first cover appearance, first time we ever see Egro is right here on cover A. This is why all things are not equal. This is why all of the things are not equal across the 4 covers of this book. 5, if you count the 1 in 25. You are getting the only cover appearance of Egro the Unbreakable on the cover A. If you're on the fence, get off the fence, get into that green grass, run to your comic shops, whatever it is you need to do. It is still early yet. Get yourself a copy of Thunderbolts number 1 cover A. And in the meantime, I need everyone to like and follow Comic Sense on Facebook and join our Comic Sense Facebook page. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us at Comic Sense on Instagram and on the Twitter. Please give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. If you don't like spoilers, because we're going to be doing this. I don't know why I keep getting beeping around me. But we're going to be doing this. So if you don't like spoilers, thumb down the video. Thumb it up. Just don't do nothing. Just don't do nothing. So that's what it was. That is what it was. That was our very first episode of Issue X, Spoils the Spec. We are going to be doing indie books. We love to do indie books. We're going to be doing indie books. We're going to be doing DC books. We started out this time with the key Marvel books that we like for this week, and we are telling you why. Again, a different spin on a review show. I don't know. Maybe there are other review shows like this, and that is cool. I don't watch them. I did a little bit of research, and this is no knock on whatever anyone's doing in the social media, the YouTube community. Shout out to you all. Props to you all. I watch people specifically say things like, we're not going to give spoilers, but they give you inside looks at the book, and they give you an idea of what the story is about. They don't give you spoilers. Spoiler, Paul Heyman style. This is a spoiler show. We're going to give you the spoilers on the Spec, and we're going to do it early enough for you to get to your local comic shops and get these books. So what we do Spec. We're going to spoil it all. We want to be different. Maybe this will make us stand out as different. I don't know. Maybe there's 10 other people doing it. That's cool. Shout out to them. Shout out to them all. And so that is what it was. That was our first ever episode of Issue X, Spoils the Spec, which has been a Comic Sense shut up-ish production. I am Issue X, and I'm going to shut up.